Welcome to SU Sports Rap, an unrehearsed exchange of ideas and opinions from campus media representatives. This week on Sports Rap, Syracuse basketball Orangemen set for a clash with the Hoyas, the NCAA strict as ever, and the Super Bowl showdown in Tampa is set. And now, here's your host, Kill J. Hong.
On it. Welcome to this edition of SU Sports Rap. I'm Kiljay Hong, this week filling in for Barry Steiner. Don't worry, he'll be back next week. Joining us on our panel this week is Dave Pash from WJPZ. From the Daily Orange, we've got sports editor Rob Guyette, and Fred King is here representing UUTV. I guess, guys, the first thing on our agenda tonight is the Syracuse Orangemen. This week they had two exciting games, one against UConn, one against Seton Hall. Let's first talk about Billy Owens, and he re-injured his back pains, and then all of a sudden he comes out against Seton Hall and scores 24 points. Do you think it really bothers him, or he's playing with pain?
Well, obviously, I noticed in the Seton Hall game, he sat out for a little bit, and he was getting some work done on his back. I'm not sure about the seriousness of the injury. They're not too willing to say, how serious the injury is. But obviously, he's probably in some pain, but he's playing through it, and he's playing just fine. Syracuse on a roll now. They've won 3 in a row. A lot of people at the beginning of the year said, Syracuse either maybe a number 20 type team. Now they got back to number 3. Everyone said, well, hey, they're pretty good. Then they lost 2 in a row, dropped a little bit. But now everyone's starting to get back with them again. I think that this is the type of team led by Billy Owens that could really upset some teams come around tournament time.
Do you agree with that?
Well, starting off with Owens, first of all, it's kind of tough to say whether he's hurt or not. All we basically have to go on is what we see on the court, because he hasn't been brought out to the media for the last 2 press conferences. He hasn't been available after the last 2 games. He basically hasn't spoken in the last 2 weeks. And seeing as how all we can go by is on how he plays, he obviously isn't playing that bad. And, 24 points, 13 rebounds last night when he was supposedly hurt and sat out a couple of minutes. Obviously, the guy is doing all right. Obviously, I think the big key for the Orangemen has been just the emergence of Dave Johnson, who is obviously got the confidence in his game, whereas last night, Saturday night, he didn't score in the first half, which is, for a 20-point scorer is very rare. And then he comes out, and doesn't force anything and gets 19 in the second half. He's just emerged as a solid contributing scorer. And I also think LaRon Ellis, a much maligned player, gets a lot of bad publicity, a lot of bad attention, but has really come on and had, I think, a surprising senior year, defensively and offensively.
Yeah, with all the ribbing that LaRon takes, I think last night in the Seton Hall game, he really shined in the first half, which was not a half that any Syracuse fan would like to remember. But I heard after the game, Billy said he was 85%, and whether or not he's to full strength or not, he still came through in the second half, and I think gave Syracuse the points they needed down the stretch to pull them ahead.
But come on, guys, getting back to LaRon Ellis, you can't tell me and disagree with me that he's a hot and cold player. You don't know which LaRon Ellis is going to show up, whether it's going to be a very good one or a very bad one.
Well, actually, I think he's kind of come into his own a little bit here. He's gotten into the flow. Last year, we talked about it so many times, the trouble that he had with, Coleman and Thompson. He was a little bit shy in the court, but I think he's becoming fairly consistent. He had 1 bad game against Seton Hall, but then again, he's had a lot of rebounds in some games, a lot of points in some games. I think he's helping this team out. I think they really needed him, along with Dave Johnson, to come to the front. I think they have a real strong, one of the stronger front courts in the Big East right now.
Do you think LaRon Ellis has accepted a position that's not in the limelight all the time? Is that why he's playing better?
I think so. I think that I have really related this team to the team that they had in '87 when we went to the championship game, because of they weren't sure if Sherman Douglas could come in and do the job as Washington left for the NBA. It's the same thing this year. They weren't sure if Dave Johnson, LaRon Ellis, Adrian Autry, Mike Edwards could come and surround Billy and help him out. And so far, they're getting the job done. I really relate this team to the team they had in '87.
What about the position of guard, though? Is Michael Edwards really fulfilling, his expectations? Of course, you can't.
They are struggling a little bit, but they are young, and they have been getting better as the season progresses. Obviously, I think any freshman, Autry, Edwards, the sophomore, he's had some ankle problems. How much that's affecting him, we don't know. They struggled at the beginning of the Big East, but I think as they get more in the flow, and there's still 10 games to go in the Big East season, and I just think that they're going to improve. And the front court right now is helping bring them along. I think you got the leadership up front that's helping the younger players.
Yeah, it's really no consolation now that they're young, but I know in the long run, coming up this year towards the NCAAs and into next year, their experience that they're going to have on the court, Autry and Edwards are just it's going to shine through. And it shows in their play recently. They've been playing a little lackluster, but it's going to come through. Once they get their experience against the Georgetowns and into the NCAAs and Big East tournament, I think they're going to play a lot better.
And you know what really helped against Seton Hall is when they went to that big lineup where they put Autry in there with Conrad, LaRon, Billy, and Dave Johnson. They showed that they can do things without Edwards, who's supposedly supposed to be their point guard. You know, Edwards, we all admit he has been struggling a little bit lately. And they showed that they can do some things without him in there, which I think is a good sign because we all know they don't have too much for backup in Mike Hopkins, Scott McCorkle. You know, McCorkle had one good game. Hopkins, a good defensive player, good aggressive player. But the point guard position is very crucial, especially if you're going to be a good team come tournament time. You need a point guard.
Yes, that's what I was just about to say. You can't have a program like this at Syracuse without the fans thinking NCAA championship and without a guard, without a very good guard that you can rely on, especially a point guard. I mean, is the whole team supposed to wait for Michael Edwards to come on and, you know, grow into his own, or can they do something about it?
I think you have to show a little bit of patience. I don't think we can place the whole Syracuse NCAA national championship contention on Michael Edwards and Adrian Autry. The team hasn't focused or relied on them all season. You have to look at where they are now. They're 16-2 or 15 or 16-2 now, and Autry and Edwards haven't played at the top of their game for the whole way. I think, like I said, the Big East season now, you've got Eric Murdoch coming up a couple times who's scoring 30 points a game. You've got Georgetown, and if you can't handle Georgetown, Georgetown usually will give you a good indication of where you are offensively.
You mentioned Georgetown. Let's take a little preview of the Georgetown game. It's going to be played on later on Monday night. Alonzo Mourning is back. Okay, you have to look at the Twin Towers down there at Hoyas, the Dikembe Mutombo and Alonzo Mourning. How much trouble is he going to give? He only scored 10 points yesterday against BC. Is he going to be back in full style?
Well, I think that right now, I don't think Georgetown is as good of a team as everyone says they are. They got a young backcourt, really unproven backcourt Charles Harrison and Brown. Mourning, you know, he's an addition. Mutombo, I mean, sure, he can block shots. If you're 7 foot, you should be able to block shots. Everyone's saying that what a great NBA player this guy's going to be. I think him and Manute Bol should go out and have lunch.
I think when you're talking about Mourning, you obviously can't miss 8 or 9 games or whatever he missed and come back and be 100%. But I think one thing that Georgetown learned is they learned how to play without Alonzo. And I think they learned how to win without Alonzo. I mean, you're starting Dikembe Mutombo and 4 freshmen. Now, obviously, in the short run, that's not going to help you. But when you get Mourning back and you get the 4 freshmen working with those guys, it's only going to make Georgetown better.
But they lost. They lost to Providence and Villanova. I mean, do you explain?
The way I'd see that they're losing is their bench. I really don't think their bench has any depth whatsoever. Syracuse's bench has a little bit more, maybe with McCorkle has proven a little bit in the last couple of games. But in the long run, the freshmen are going to hurt them, and players like Stoudemire and Ronnie Thompson just haven't had enough experience.
Okay, really quick, easy time for SU tomorrow?
Not an easy time, just because the way that these two teams play each other with Georgetown's defense. I think that they won't have an easy time.
Rob?
Players will win by 4.
They'll start slow, Syracuse, and win in the end.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for that. We're going to take a break here on Sports Rap, and we're going to talk about the NCAA rules coming from the convention from last week's meeting in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome back to SU Sports Rap. Let's turn to NCAA convention that was held in Nashville last week, and lots of rules came out with cuts all across the board. I guess the biggest cut is, first of all, there are lots of cuts, and there are 2 main ones. But first of all, Rob, let's talk about the practice time. They can only practice, all teams, all sports, and all NCAA sports can only practice 20 hours a week, limited to 4 hours a day. What is that going to do to all the sports, especially basketball and football?
Well, the major team sports, it won't affect as much as it will the individual sports. You look at basketball, Jim Boeheim was talking about his team rarely practices 20 hours a week as it is, so it won't affect them as much. Football team, I would imagine the same way. But you start looking at some of the other sports.
Swimming.
You look at swimming. You look at some of the golf. You look at gymnastics. If you're going to limit athletes to 20 hours a week in these individual sports, you're really not allowing them to become, the best players or athletes that they can be. I don't know how they're going to imply or work in or enforce those rules, I should say, because I mean, who's going to stop a golfer from going out to the courts at 5 o'clock at night? But basically, I think the main thing with the NCAA rules is that it's just made at a poor time of the year when you have football season overlapping, you have with basketball season, which are obviously the two main revenue sports at a university. You have basically football people making the rules changes. Obviously, the basketball coaches and other basketball people aren't involved in as much of the rule-making process as they would like. And as Coach Boeheim has said in the past 2 weeks, the basketball programs around the nation feel slighted by the cuts that were made, specifically within the coaching staffs.
Do you think it's unfair, Fred?
Well, in a couple of aspects, the fact that they're limited with the amount of incoming high school seniors that they can recruit and the number that they can take on, it is slightly unfair because when you take off 2 basketball players out of 15, or if you take out 10 out of 90 football players, it's a lot tougher on the basketball team. To lose those 2 recruits is a big thing, rather than if the football team loses 10, they can possibly handle it. So I think it's a little, as Rob said, unfair towards the basketball.
What about
programs.
the coaches being cut, Dave? I mean, all the teams have to drop at least one, except for football. They have to drop an average of 3 coaches. Isn't that going to be detrimental to all the Division I football teams?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, football especially, you have a coach for each type of thing. You have a quarterback coach, defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator. I think that really hurts your teams. And talking about the NCAA, I mean, there's problems. We always have problems in the NCAA. There's so many things that they need we have to talk about. Just besides some of the other things that they talked about during the meetings. How about with scholarship money, paying students to
cut
come
by
here
10%, right?
And all these other things. The NCAA, I don't know what's going on inside there. We don't know what's going on inside.
Why are they doing it? Are they going on a power trip?
I think morality-wise, it looks good. There's a lot of pressure on the NCAA to cut back because college sports is becoming too big for American society today. So if it looks good if they cut back, 10% across the board, and the nation says, ooh, the NCAA is really concentrating more on scholastics now. Well, if you look at it deeper, that's not necessarily the case.
Okay, I guess it's a consensus, and that doesn't happen often here on this show, but it's a consensus that the NCAA is just being unfair to all their sports. Well, we're going to take another short break here on SU Sports Rap. Coming up, we're going to talk about the NHL All-Star Game, and Super Bowl 25 is set. Hello, everyone. Okay, let's talk about the NHL All-Star Game. I guess big controversy beforehand was Wayne Gretzky, the star of the NHL, or still a big star, called for cancellation of the game due to the war, and of course it wasn't canceled. What do you think about that?
Well, the Great One thought that it might be a good idea to take the game and postpone it a bit, possibly to just so America can get their minds set on the war, and so they would have a break. But I think that the troops over in Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf, as well as the people here in America, want life to go on as it is. And the game itself really wasn't that exciting, but in the long run, it's good that they put it on, and I think all sporting events should
not
stay
exciting.
on.
First of all, Wayne Gretzky's from Canada. What is it? And I don't see Canada supplying any help or being too involved in the Persian Gulf War, so I don't know what he was speaking out about in the first place.
He's playing for the Los Angeles Kings now, though.
His brother, or his cousin, I can't remember which it is, but a relative of his is there in Saudi Arabia. But Fred, I totally agree with you on the fact that life must go on. I mean, the war is the big thing. Sports does not matter. War takes precedence, It's life. Sports is just a game. But they want sports to go on. I think it should go on because it's a part of everyday life.
I think some of the importance was shown yesterday if you saw the national anthem played before the game.
Yes.
While it's not patriotic to cheer during the national anthem in Chicago, it was a rousing ovation, and I would think that it would have to inspire any of the troops who watched the game because it was broadcast live to Saudi Arabia, and I would think that would have to help them more than anything.
I think it inspired Mr. Damhoos from the Maple Leafs as well. Damhoos, who got his 4 goals, tied the NHL All-Star
Believe me,
record.
you're not going to hear from him again for the rest of the season.
Little flash in the
One
pan.
thing, though, the NHL All-Star Game being on NBC is, of course, to make the game more popular. Is it working? I don't see it working because it's not getting exciting.
Bowling hasn't worked on channels for years, and hockey just hasn't caught on in America. It's very big in other countries, especially Canada. The United States just hasn't taken it in as their football, baseball, and basketball.
Well, so much revolves around the networks. Basically right now, hockey is only seen on Sports Channel.
Right.
I think ESPN is talking about possibly bringing hockey back to their network. That would obviously be a step, but all they're taking right now is small steps.
I think when you talk about all-star games in general, I mean, they're never really that exciting. Everyone builds them up to be something so great. You know, the All-Pro game, the NBA All-Star game. The NBA All-Star game is usually pretty exciting. A lot of times it gets real high scoring.
It scores a lot of points, but I don't know about exciting. All-Star games seems to be duds to me. I mean, there's just a lot of hype, but they don't play together, so, it doesn't
and the fact
fulfill.
that most people go to hockey games in the first place to see fights.
To see fights,
And
it doesn't come
the
out in the
All-Stars are going to
All-Star
fight
game.
together.
Okay, let's move on to the NFL, National Football League, one of the major sports in our country. And I guess Super Bowl 25 is set. It's going to be the Buffalo Bills, and surprisingly, I think it's the New York Giants. I mean, they just squeaked by the San Francisco 49ers. They can't go for 3 in a row, and I believe Buffalo has like a clear way to victory. What do you think?
Well, I told you, when you're on the show, I said this, the last show of the semester, I said, Bills and Giants will win the Super Bowl. I said that all year long. From day one, I picked the Giants to win the Super Bowl. They will win the Super Bowl. However, one thing, the Bills showed the Raiders whose family today.
51-3 was the final. But the Giants winning the Super Bowl? No way.
The Giants surprised a lot of people by winning, and you say they squeaked by, but really they had a lot more opportunities in this game than the 49ers did. A drop pass by Maurice Carthon in the end zone and a missed kick by Matt Barr. They could have been a lot bigger lead than it actually was.
They got lucky. You know what we're overlooking is Joe Montana got re-injured. His back, he was taken out of the game.
That was already in the fourth quarter, and it might not have affected. And Steve Young's not a bad backup. He could have come in and done something. And the Giants' defense in the third and fourth quarter just was outstanding in stopping Roger Craig and Brent Jones over the middle and keeping the 49ers contained.
Rob, you're keeping quiet.
Kind of as a preview for next week, I think it's really good that there is not the extra week involved and we're getting the Super Bowl going next
The media
Sunday.
can't hype it up.
Because I think what happens is, I mean, you give the players 2 weeks and maybe they think about it all so much. We find out if everybody would want to be a tree, who would they want to be? They would be an animal. And we get all those stupid questions, those stupid stories like that. Maybe with 1 week of preparation time, we can focus in more on the game. Maybe the players can focus more on the game, too, because, I mean, all you have to do is look at Super Bowl past, and obviously one team is focused and one team hasn't.
And, Kilge, I want to get back to something you said. You were talking about the Giants. We haven't talked about the Bills here. The Bills have never been to the Super Bowl. They've never been there. They have, back when they're in Rich Stadium, they've got however many screaming fans that are going wacko. I mean, down in Tampa, it's not going to be like that. It's warm weather, and the Giants have been to the big game before. Jeff Hostetler, he's never started in the big game. They had Sims back in '87 when they won the Super Bowl that year, but the Bills have never been there. I think if the Bills are going to win, they have to stay in it in the first quarter. Usually they're blowouts. Teams get blown out in the first quarter because they're all nervous, and one team takes advantage of that, and that's when you see the blowouts in the Super Bowls. I think the Bills have to keep it up here if they're going to win the game.
I think the Bills might have the psychological edge, though, knowing that just 3 or 4 weeks ago, they did beat the Giants on the Giants' home turf.
And I think it comes down to one aspect, and I think it's the running game. Both teams rely on it a lot. The Giants a little bit more. So I think that if the Giants can run the ball effectively with Otis Anderson, and Jeff Hostetler seems to be running the team very well, they can produce a slow, monotonous offensive attack that can maybe take Bruce Smith and the great defense that the Bills have out of the game.
I think the Giants' running game, they have to keep the Bills' offense off the field, obviously, with the firepower of that offense. And I think with the running game, the ball control game that Bill Parcells has, whether it's Phil Simms or Jeff Hostetler, I think that's going to be the key, keeping the offense of the Bills.
Well, it's certainly a test for the Giants, obviously facing what I think is the top 2 offenses in the NFL. You look at the top offense in the NFC has to be San Francisco, and all you have to do is look at Buffalo's playoff scores: 44 points, 51 points. Right now, they have to be considered, one of the top offensive teams. Obviously, the only one left, but they're playing very well, and it's going to be a challenge for the Giants defense to step it up for the 2nd week in a row.
Yeah, but it's for 3-4 years the Bills have not won that big game. And
Well,
they come
it
into
doesn't get
Well,
much bigger than
Right, well, I'm saying,
championship.
well, yeah, but
Super Bowl.
they finally get past that last plateau to the final plateau, Super Bowl 25. Are they going to be up to the task? Is Jim Kelly 100%? He looks like he was today. And I think the Bills' offense is
He
outstanding.
threw for 300 yards. What more do you want? I mean, okay, let's go around, and I guess we're going to start off with quickly. Tell me who you think is going to win and why.
I think the Giants are going to win because they have the experience of the Super Bowl. All these guys, that defense, that great defense that the Giants possess, they've been there before. Otis Anderson's a veteran. The Bills, they had their problems the past 3 years. They couldn't get it together. They had the best talent in the AFC. They couldn't get it together until this year. I like the Giants 34-20.
I think the Bills are going to prevail, and I think Bruce Smith is going to have Jeff Hostetler for lunch. 31-13 Bills.
I think the line, the play on the line is going to be the big thing, and I think the Giants' line is a little bit more experienced in the big game, and I think they'll come out on top 24-20.
Okay, I'm afraid to give my prediction because last year I picked Denver, and you know what happened to them. So, but the Buffalo Bills, I said it before that even if San Francisco got into the Super Bowl, there's no other team in the NFL that could beat the 49ers except for the Bills. So the Bills will win it. Maybe they'll squeak by 24-16, the final.
So put your money on the Giants or something.
All right, maybe, maybe not. If you want to go the Killjoy system, all right, vote on the Giants and make big bucks. If you want to just go to where your heart is, go with the Bills. I think their defense and offense is very balanced. Thank you, Rob. Okay, we're going to take a break here at SG Sports Rap, and when we come back, it's Parting Rap. Is waiting with bated breath to find out Dave's mid-season basketball prediction.
Player of the year. Sorry, Billy. It's Shaquille O'Neal. Most improved player, I'll stay here in Syracuse with Dave Johnson. Most underrated player, I like Harold Miner at USC. Most overrated, Damon Bailey and Dikembe Mutombo. It's a tie. Best team, UNLV. Surprise team to watch in the tournament, Kentucky.
Most overrated team in the country, Arizona, and Andre Agassi, the bad boy of tennis, is proclaimed that he's a new man this year. Unfortunately, he's wearing a Los Angeles Kings cap these days, and we frankly at the Daily Orange feel badly for Wayne Gretzky and the Kings.
I'd have to say that in this time of trouble, of war, and we have to look deep down and say that the only good things that the Patriots have done this year is to knock out some Scud missiles in Iraq, and hopefully next year with Coach Dickie Mack, they'll come back and do something in the NFL.
I guess that's good luck to everybody overseas and to Dick McPherson. All right, one quick note. I guess maybe it's safe for me to say right now that Duke will be in the Final Four, but they won't win the championship. Well, it's about time the Blue Devils won, so go Duke, and I think they're going to do it this year. These guys are giving me funny looks.
So bet against Duke, we're saying.
Be quiet. Okay, here we go. It's that's it. That's our show. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Barry Steiner will be back next week on the show. Have a good evening, everyone.